Welcome to Middle Age Muchacho, a podcast about what happens when you hit your 40s and realize you're still trying to figure yourself out. I'm your host, Billy Ramirez, a former music journalist. I used to write for Drum Magazine, and current digital marketer and stand-up comedian who's learning that midlife is not a crisis, but instead it's an opportunity. Each week, I will talk to friends, creatives, and curious minds about aging, growth, and all the weird, uncomfortable, and surprising ways we keep evolving. Sometimes that means facing a fear, taking on a challenge, or just laughing at how far we've come and how far we have still yet to go. I am very excited about my first guest, who is Sean Mendelson. He's a good friend of mine and former bandmate. He's a singer-songwriter, music educator, and founder of Sean's Music Factory. But before all that, we attended Santa Clara University together. Go Broncos. And we also played in a band together called Mirror Image from 2004 to 2009. So without further ado, please put your hands together wherever you are watching this. And I hope you have a good time listening to my conversation with Sean Mendelson. Thank you. Good. Yeah. Well, sweet. I'm glad you joined me again. It's been in the interest of honesty and fairness. We recorded an episode June 12th of last year.
Right.
And but by that point, I didn't know what I was going to do with a podcast. I hadn't really started doing comedy in LA yet and all that. And now I have a year of being the Middle Age Muchacho. So all right. So enough banter. I'm going to introduce you. You're Sean Mendelson. You're a singer-songwriter, music educator, and founder of Sean's Music Factory. But before all that, we attended Santa Clara University together. And we were in a band called Mirror Image from 2004 to 2009. About give or take, right? Tell us about Mirror Image. I like to describe Mirror Image as Dave Matthews was a female lead singer. Dave Matthews with Alison Krauss as a singer. So tell us about the origins of that, and maybe a little bit about Shades of Houston, maybe.
Yeah. Well, Shades of Houston, which my dad misheard as Saddam Hussein when I first told him that was already off to a bad name. Shades of Houston was a reference to Bono because I just loved U2 and I continue to love U2 to this day. And so I was like, oh, let me do an obscure reference to a singer I like and have a terrible name. But so that's how Shades of Houston worked out. And that was when I was the singer of the band. And then I fired myself and we reinvented. And that's when I met you. That's when I just said, hey, Billy, you want to come drum with us? I don't remember the exact way it played out. You probably remember better than I do.
Mirror Image, and like the reason I bring up Mirror Image right away is because unfortunately we've had some bad news from Mirror Image. So Mirror Image, the core of it was myself at drums, you singer, songwriter, guitarist, Brad Okamoto playing everything under the sun, Dino Scoppettone, who we lost on August 18th, 2008. And we recently lost our singer, Lisa Trevorrow, in June. So, I think this is a good opportunity to talk about memories of some of the members that we've lost.
It's crazy because they're having a service for Lisa coming up in a couple of weeks that I plan on attending either on Zoom or in person. And I went back through. I save all my emails for good and bad reasons, but in this case, I have our first official band photo, which didn't have Dino in it, but just seeing us all as we were all, most of us were 23, like you said, 22, 23, 24 in that range in the picture. And Lisa was in her early 30s, I think, when we met her. I think she's about 10 years older than us. And so was Dino. Dino might have been even older. I think he was 10 or 11 years old.
Oh, he was so old. That guy, he was an AARP member.
It is a trip because they both, in my opinion, anybody who dies before 60 dies young because people are living longer on the whole on this planet. And so both of them being lost to cancer is morbidly tragic. And I never forget how Lisa told me about visiting Dino. It was a couple of weeks before he died, and she's a nurse practitioner, so she knew the writing was on the wall that he was moving on to the next plane. And it's tough because I went back and I saw emails from Dino to our band saying, hey, I'm just starting this journey and I'm going to beat this cancer and this is what it's going to be like. I don't know what it's ahead, but I still want to play music with you guys. And there's something that shocked me about that because I hadn't read that message when it was just a passing kind of note back in the day because you don't think the worst is going to happen. And then Dino had a 32 or 30-pound tumor removed from his stomach. And I remember that he was at band rehearsals telling us how hard he was working to exercise and get rid of the weight. And he wouldn't lose weight. And I found that I knew at the time something I didn't know obviously he had cancer. Something was up with that because he's like, I work out all the time. And I was like, I just ostensibly superficially noticed his stomach wasn't decreasing in size like it would normally if you were working out as regularly as he said. And then a lesson I took forever, and again, it's a morbid lesson, is he said he hadn't gotten a physical in 7 years, and he was 35 at the time. And I get a physical every year, no matter what. It's essential, and it's not about me. In my case, it's about my kids and my family at this point. But the lesson was that it's important to take care of your health and not to overlook those basic things like getting an annual physical. But yeah, he and Lisa both tragically, and Lisa, I know she seemingly beat the cancer, went into remission, and it came back, and it's just so shocking because you're the one who let me know about it, and then her widow husband, it's not a widow, is it a widow? What is it when it's the man? It's something else, I think. But whatever, she had a son and a husband left behind, and he reached out and told the whole Facebook community the whole story, and I just said what a great opportunity it was to be able to play with Lisa, who had a great voice. And you mentioned some singers there that she was like Alison Krauss and Linda. My dad, who's much older, was much older, said she sounded like Linda Ronstadt. And I listened back and from the 70s, and she definitely had that. And she was big into she played Lilith Fair as an opener before we met her. And she had a little run at success in that respect as well. And I just think back to I don't write music with too many people, if anyone at all. And she and I wrote 2 or 3 songs together where I wrote the chords and she wrote the lyrics and the melody. And it's just a very special kinship to be able to do that. And obviously, as the band, we were able to bring those songs to life in a way that's always profound from a creative standpoint. So they will be missed. And I'm glad you and I are here able to talk about that too.
Yeah. So one of the reasons I had never really, I never published the first pilot episode from last year is because I didn't feel it had enough substance. I think I felt I still needed to do some growth, and like I don't think I've admitted this to many people, but so I didn't know that Dino had a tumor.
Oh,
Actually, really didn't know until remember we did a show at Santa Clara University. I remember dates for some reason, May 5th, 2008.
that's
And
cool.
then so we have a so I don't know if you remember the video of Some Other Life. I'll probably put it up there where the Some Other Life video from that Santa Clara show. And it's just Brad Shin because the camera was down on the floor. But that's when I found out it was May 5th, 2008. He was saying that he was going to go into surgery that following week, and he had a tumor in his abdomen. And prior to that, I spent 4 years working as an usher at the San Jose Arena.
Right.
And I had a colleague, Lex Katina, who he was going to go into surgery. I remember he was telling me we were we were we were working the doors, taking tickets, and then after the show started, so we were just there, just manning the doors, the front doors, the south entrance at San Jose Arena. And he was telling me that he was going to go into surgery to get a tumor removed, and he was going to have some organs rearranged and this and that. And then when Dino told me that, similar, the same thing, I got scared because Lex didn't make it.
Right.
So I think, quite honestly, I kind of knew that maybe that was the last time I was going to see Dino, May 5th.
Wow.
And I regret not seeing him in the hospital. I didn't visit him, but it was just out of fear because I felt that he was not going to make it.
Interesting. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't, what's crazy is Brad just sent me those blogs, which I didn't see in real time back then, where Lisa was talking about her visit. She told me on the phone about her visit, but she had blogged about her visit with Dino. Like I said, she saw that he was so skinny and what she saw people at end of life there. I was actually, I'm always an eternal optimist, I think. And he just seems so young. I had never been met with somebody dying that young in their life and had so much ahead of them. And I don't know if you were at there was a gig. I know we had some communication. I think there was some communication in the band because we were all dealing with what was going on with Dino differently. But I did a gig in Santana Row, and you have to remind me if you were there. And it was Brad and I, and it might even have been a different singer at that point. There was a girl who did a couple gigs after Lisa.
Meg. Yeah, we had
Yeah.
Meg.
Or do you remember there was a Santana Row gig where there was a guy got really mad at me for putting children's instruments in the front and letting children play? I never forget this because he was like, "Why would you let these children ruin your music?" And he had this thick Eastern European accent, and he came at me. And Brad had to get between him and I. I have no violence in my bones. I'm a pacifist by nature,
Yeah.
but I felt like he might get violent towards me over such an odd thing. Like you're letting children play music at Santana Row, an open area here and a beautiful thing. And then I remember after that gig, and again, you have to tell me if you were at that. That's when I found out Dino died. And Brad had found out before the
Yeah,
gig.
I think I was there.
You were at,
Yeah,
okay.
if
Because for
Meg
me,
so yeah.
it threw me for a massive loop. I just kept thinking he'd be all right. And then I remember his communication over email became less frequent. And
Yeah.
I guess maybe that was a sign that it turned for the worse. And you just keep a good thought until it doesn't. But yeah, I'm sorry that I'm sorry for us all. It was a loss because Dino was such a decent, good, hardworking guy. And he was fun and he was charismatic and he loved making music. And he just started presenting ideas to the band about writing. And I think if he had lived, we probably would have kept making music for
Oh yeah.
years ahead because, you know, when an arm gets cut off, you can't as well play him being the metaphorical arm of the band in that respect. So, yeah, it's tough.
Oh, I think he would have had a really successful podcast talking about gaming or
Yeah,
playing the bass or just making fun of me,
absolutely.
calling me Frodo. That's one of my favorite memories. He called me Frodo all the time.
Well, and he was so yeah, he had thoughts on everything. He was always great to talk to. He always had opinions and never abrasive. He would take different stances on stuff, but I remember he had really strong opinions about like I remember there's two songs I think of him. One is Where the Streets Have No Name, going back to U2 again, and he always said that intro to it, and I hadn't really thought about it till he said it, and I tend to agree with him is the greatest rock and roll intro ever recorded, just the way it builds, and there's this polyrhythmic thing where Edge is playing three on his guitar while uh, Larry Mullen Jr. is playing in four, and it just builds and builds this massive epic intro for an epic song. And he convinced me very easily that that was the best song ever written. And then I also remember there's that song by Coldplay. I don't like Coldplay, but there's one song I like that I think I brought to the band, Tears Stream or Fix You, I think is the name of the song.
Fix you.
Fix You. And I remember
Yeah.
us playing in my mom's garage that song. And I attributed that to him because that's one of my last memories of us working on something new. I don't know if I think we might have played it once live, maybe not at all.
Yeah.
But whenever I hear that song, which is already automatically a tearjerker of a song, it was in an animated film I had recently seen too. I always think of Dino and how tragic to lose his life at such a young age, you know.
Well, speaking of Coldplay, the one song I still to this day can't hear is Viva La Vida. Because no, because remember, I think that was one of the last songs played at his funeral.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that was one of the last songs played at his funeral.
Oh
And
my
another
gosh.
thing I remember, so I think I drove down with you, right?
Yeah.
In the Honda Element.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I remember is Viva La Vida being played at the very end or near the very end. And also some gentleman just showing up to the funeral just wearing a t-shirt. Oh, and I was livid. Like, how dare you show up to Dino's funeral in a t-shirt? Like, oh my
Yeah. I
God.
don't remember that. That's a funny thing to remember. Like you said, you remember the dates. It is weird. You remember those little peripheral things sometimes that come more into focus than sort of
Well,
the
you know
bigger
the
ideas.
date of our first gig, August 20th, 2004,
Oh, is that right?
at the Hayward Bowl.
Wait, so you do just remember dates? I don't remember this about you. Do you remember dates like
Yeah,
this or do
yeah, I
you?
do. Yeah.
That's
August
really
20th,
cool.
2004. And our mutual buddy Anuj Aurora was on
Yeah.
bass.
Love the news.
Yeah.
News. He pops up on my Facebook, on your feed and my feed every once in a
Yeah.
while. I'll see him comment or like something, and
Yeah.
he was a good dude as well, or is a good dude as well.
So, Lisa, do you remember the rehearsals while trying to find a new singer?
Yeah.
There's one I forget. This young lady. I don't want to make fun of her, but I remember she sang "Ice Cream" by Sarah McLachlan, and It's like, like it's not gonna be her. But
Yeah.
do you remember how we found Lisa?
Yeah, it was Craigslist, and I remember there was a a young woman who reminded me of Gwen Stefani with black hair and had that vibe, and I was like so stoked because she had this energy and this vibe, and she was young. She wasn't necessarily the greatest singer in the world, but I thought she was going to be in the band, and then she just stopped answering phone calls. So that was a hit to the soul, and the hit to like, oh, this was feeling right. When Lisa came in, I remember she made a point. She was on a Craigslist thing. She came to San Mateo. I think I met her first before the band, and I was living in an apartment in a flat, or what is it called, a loft or something, where it was just one big open space and a bedroom and a restroom. But she came up in her overalls and dressed as far down as she could because it was her effort to be picked purely on her talent and almost take the appearance aspect out of the equation. And so and it was smart because yeah, her voice shined through, and in the end, that's for me all that mattered. And then, of course, the next time I saw her, she dressed a little bit more up, and she had makeup on and her hair done, and it was more like, okay, I can be a lead singer of a band in a more traditional sense, which was also has a value in marketing something. Obviously, you need that. And I was just taken by her ease. And I remember we only had a few friction moments and every band has them, but I remember sometimes she felt devalued or unheard at certain points. And I took it to heart. And it was good for me to learn because um, I felt a lot of times like I was carrying an elephant when I was trying to do something with the band as far as like booking. There was so much work to book the gigs and stuff. And it's always a trade-off. And it's like a marriage to five, in our case, four other people for each of us and different personalities. But in the end, we all loved music. We all liked playing together. And like you always said, I think our thing was that we were all just like good, decent people
Yeah.
when all comes down to it. And that was a connecting thread.
Yeah, booking a show is difficult because remember, I think I only booked one because you had a major responsibility for that. But I was contacted by this band, the Nikhil Karula band, I think out of SoCal.
Yeah.
They were coming up like the West Coast, and then they asked to play with us, and then so we did a.
Well, and you got us our Bodog thing, which was our
Oh,
biggest
I did. Did I?
Great American. Yeah, you like you
Yeah.
set it up.
Oh, hold on. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, let me touch on that
Good.
after. But Nikhil Karula, they were from SoCal, great band. They kind of also Dave Matthews influence. But we booked a Wednesday show at the Boom Boom Room. Remember?
Okay.
And do you remember that no one showed up?
I remember a few
Be
gigs where nobody
because
showed up.
it ties into to Bodog because we had a Bodog show that Saturday in San Francisco.
Okay.
So our crowd, they were not going to go to a Wednesday show. They were going to use their night out for Saturday.
Right.
And I remember, oh yes, okay, this is the Nikhil Kurula show. So we played to an empty Boom Boom Room in San
Okay.
Francisco, and then I remember
That does sound familiar.
because I forgot my floor tom legs at that
Oh,
show, so I had to get replacement legs, and then like I still remember this vividly because during one of our rehearsals for that Bodog show, like Dino brought it up, and I snapped at him for some reason.
oh.
I remember that.
I don't remember that. I don't
No, I
remember
snapped,
you.
but I snapped at him in front of everyone. And then, oh, it was not 12, was it 12 Galaxies, Rocket Room? I forget.
El
I'm just
Rio. There's so many
so
that we played. We actually Hotel
no, it was
Utah, El
no, no,
Rio,
what
Shattuck.
was the bigger ones? We did
The biggest ones was Slims for Bodog. We played.
it was a Slim show because
Oh, and 12
after
Galaxies was the one
because
before Slims, I think.
we did
12
12
Galaxies, Slims, Great
Galaxies,
American.
Slims, and then so it was
Yeah.
right before the Slim show. I remember
Yeah.
Dino got all fatherly on me. He's like, come over here. And then we went downstairs and like, don't you ever talk to me that way. I was like, yeah,
See,
he's
I don't
right.
remember that. It's interesting. Obviously,
Yeah.
it sticks out because it was a
Yeah.
moment and
Like,
a friendship.
oh my God. It's just one of those. And
I,
like, that's one of the points of this podcast is just,
yeah.
growth, personal growth, and, trying to be a better person. But
I
I
remember
cringe about snapping at Dino and
I
yeah.
remember, and speaking of snapping, but before you, we had a guy named John Holloway and some other iteration of not Mirror Image, another band, and he went the wrong way on the Bay Bridge and went the back across. So when he got to the gig, he was so angry, he punched his front window of his car, shattered it with his
Jeez.
bare fist. And I was just standing there like, oh, are we going to be okay tonight? And we had I actually had a good gig, I remember after that, but
Wow. Like,
it was crazy. But
I'm
that stuff
more
happens.
I'm more of a verbal snapper, but like it just at the time, just trying to navigate life and stress and whatnot. But I remember because Dino, so, like he was very funny, very personable, but sometimes he could just
Yeah.
needle you, and like at that, like I just like
Well,
I
and he did have
snapped.
he had a decade on us, so he did have some natural wisdom we probably weren't appreciating at the time. I
Yeah,
know I did a little bit, like I said, with obviously some of the bigger stuff I mentioned earlier, but I mean, he'd been around and working in the business world, and I remember him saying things like, "Oh, so he said, get a retirement plan." That was another thing he told me, which I
yeah,
started shortly thereafter. He's like, "Start getting a retirement plan. It's the greatest thing you can do." And I was like, "Okay, I guess I have to do that if I'm gonna survive on this planet." So I got a
yeah,
small little retirement plan as a result of him needling
yeah.
me to get one, as
But
it were.
yeah, that Slim show, that was a great show. I
That was
remember
the
that because
best.
we did a song called Self-Important. And
Yes.
then actually I kind of want you to talk about it because
Yeah.
I think it's still very relevant, that song, but we did Self-Important with the extended solo and
Yeah.
and we stopped at what the second beat of measure 11. Remember
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
You know, it's a good one because I don't remember when it was, and I can't remember, but years after the band ended, I think Lisa emailed me and said, I understand, or maybe it was at the end of near the end of our band. It was a long time since we'd been performing it regularly that she said, now I understand that song. I think she went to it might have been while we were in the band. She went to South America on this tour or something and understood that the worldview perspective about how we, especially in the Bay Area, I think at that time when that song was written about how self-important we are. There's a lot
yeah,
of self-important people in politics right now. And, you could call it narcissism, but that's a step further, because you're getting a more mental illness stage. But my lyric is, when did the crosswalk turn into the
turn
runway?
into the
And it might
runway.
be my best lyric I ever wrote because it sounds like a good lyric, and the meaning behind it is holds true today. My daughter, who's 15, is learning to drive, and I said, listen, you're going to get all the rules and stuff, and then everybody out in the road doesn't follow any of them. So you have to learn all the rules, pass the test, the driving test, and realize when you're in Los Gatos or other nicer neighborhoods in this area, people don't stop at stop signs. They'll make U-turns in front of you. And so the song was sort of about how people, it was the opposite of community. And I think that as a people, a civilization, we have to, especially with climate change, have to find a way to be more communal and rely on each other because we're so individualized. And as a result, people are comfortable stepping on each other and putting on blinders to people around them. And I'll say this: this is a hot take, as it were. And no offense if you're a family member or a friend, but if a lot of Tesla drivers, and I have friends who I appreciate, they seem to not use signals or stop at stop signs in particular. It used to be Lexus drivers, I say,
And
but now I'll just
BMW
take it.
drivers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what that song is about. It was hopefully cutting through and having people consider that we should not it wasn't even being dogmatic. Oh, judging you should do that. We all, including myself, should be able to look at the world. It's that old age adage: "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you," and uphold that legitimately. I'm a big proponent of kindness and being good to one another as much as I can. Not to say I don't get angry at people, I don't raise my voice, get angry at my family, friends. I recently got angry in public for the first time ever. And it happens, but as long as you lead with kindness, then I think that we all benefit. That's what that's about.
Yeah. So going back to Lisa, so I was the one that told you about her passing.
Yes,
Oh my
I don't
Lord.
remember if you
Oh
emailed
geez,
me
I
or
should
was
have
it,
used more tact.
well, I don't know how. I think it was a Facebook message or an email, or maybe you had No, I think you just posted, and I was a shock. And then
Oh,
I then I
really?
then yeah, and then I looked. Oh, my light just went out. So sorry
That's
about
all
my
right.
lo-fi. But yeah, I think yeah, and then I followed up. I think I emailed or I messaged Damon, and I just said how it's profoundly sorry I'm for him and their son, who's a teenager, and just to hear the story that she was in remission and climbing a mountain just a month before it all came back and took her out is just mind bending, and it's horrific. It's horrific, but
Yeah, so people come and go and you start drifting apart and you kind of stay connected through social media. So I knew she was going through challenges but like I didn't know she was near the end. And actually I it was a text from Anuj.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then he said that Lisa had passed away, which is kind of comes full circle because I think I texted Brad that Dino had passed away back in
Oh
2008.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
and yeah, that's when Brad again. I after you contacted me, I contacted Brad and I said, and then that's when he found these blog and he sent me the screenshots or something of them because I couldn't work on my computer. And one was just about our band playing at the El Rio, and then another was a picture of her with a beautiful picture, which I'm going to send on to the folks that are putting the funeral together of Dino and her, which is just crazy. And like you, yeah, like you and Brad and I have talked about, it's 2/5 of our band that we played in for a few years at formative time in our youth. And um, it was not lost on me. I was the forced perspective I had when Dino, and it's now I'm come to a place where I've gotten, and I know you've done a lot of work this year. You said on yourself and through your comedy and whatever. I uh, I don't take for granted. Yes, it's a reminder when this happens tragically to somebody who's just a little older than us, but I really strive each day, and I encourage anybody who ever hears this to lead with gratitude. I mentioned kindness, but if you wake up with gratitude, and it's all perspective, you can have you can have like the shittiest thing going on either in relationships or work or whatever. But if you find the thing that you are grateful, like my health, let's say, or oh, it's a beautiful day outside. Those little things. If you start the day off by focusing on those things, then you're going to fare better, I think, in life. And instead of being at the sort of miserable or neutral level, you can always sort of glide along gratitude,
yeah,
gratitude, even when things are hard and challenging. And these are reminders, but I, I I think with Dino's passing is when that probably started formulating in my mind, not so specifically, but like obviously like, oh, I better take care of myself kind of a thing, you
yeah.
know.
So now, as a father, you have a 15-year-old, and how old's your son?
My son is about to turn 18, Billy.
18.
And actually
Oh,
one of the videos I found is I
Logan.
don't even know what song it was. Lisa and I are singing in the background at Santana Row, and Jen, my sister-in-law, is holding my 6-month-old kid 17 and a half years ago, I guess, at one of our last shows on the big stage at Santana Row there. And I can't I have to send you the video because I don't know what
I
song it
might
is.
I might have those videos still
Oh, really?
on a
Because
hard drive.
it's
Yes.
a familiar song that I know we wrote. It was an original song, but it
No,
must have
actually,
been
I
late in the
remember.
game.
Sorry,
Yeah.
this. Sorry, this is kind of being egotistical, but I remember. So yeah, you mentioned Jen, your sister-in-law.
Yeah.
So she's playing with Logan,
Yeah.
and we're playing. It might have been Hit or Creatures of Habit.
Maybe Creatures of Habit because
So
it,
she's
yeah,
playing with Logan. He's making, like adorable baby noises.
yeah,
But I remember because I hit a really cool fill in the background. So that's one
nice.
of the reasons I remember that video.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
I'll have to send you a video, see if it's that moment because ironically, they didn't show the video is just on my kid, but
Yeah.
you hear us in the background. It's kind of a trip to have that experience, like the calf of Brad at the Santa Clara show.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of your favorite memories of Lisa? Like a lot of my favorite memories from Lisa are just uh, picking. So used to pick her up at I used to know I used to meet her at the train station in San Mateo, and then we'd go to one of the local bars. There was the like B Street Grill or something.
Yeah, that sounds right.
'Cause,
That
yeah, it was
sounds
it
right.
was the same bar where I think Brad burned himself on a shepherd's pie.
Oh, there might have been third. There's a Third Avenue Sports Bar, but B Street Grill. It's one of those two, or I know both of those sound familiar to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so Lisa and I would have a couple of I think it was Red Hook
Okay.
beer, and then we'd go over to your place and rehearse. Yeah. So not so much the playing in a band with Lisa, but just those moments outside of playing with a band, just hanging out with Lisa. She's always willing to offer lots of advice.
Lisa's temperament was even keel,
Yeah.
and for me, and actually, I would say Brad and probably even you. I mean, everybody's was really even keel. I just remember Brad telling me, "Dude, this is it happening now." Because I was always future oriented because I wanted to
Yeah.
go big or go home. You know what I mean? I wanted to like be a huge thing, uh, not because of the fame part, but like where I wanted to like make a living doing something successfully like that. And I remember uh, the even temperament of Lisa and Brad saying, just enjoy what we're doing now. And I really had to force myself to do that at that time in my life. But Lisa was always smiling. She was always, I mean, for me, it was a lot about the music. I know but like just working on harmonies with her and like getting that space, it's a spiritual place for me to be able to connect with someone that level. I actually never felt worthy vocally to even work with her, but I just by process of elimination, I ended up being the background vocalist for my own songs in a way. And so there's tremendous kinship. And it's a very interpersonal and unique experience to be able to do that. It's a vulnerable thing to sing. I mean, I don't care who you are. Um, and I found that profoundly moving, especially when we recorded the songs and I could hear how her voice meshed and how she worked it so she made it her own and all that stuff. These songs that I had written the lyrics and mostly the melodies for. Um, but she was always smiling, always up for a good joke. And like I said, it was only a couple times ever that we had any friction. So that was my
The
memory.
only, actually, it's not so much friction, but the only time I remember Lisa, and I'm not saying she was difficult, but like when we were recording our demo and we were recording parallels, and then she didn't want to do it to click track. But remember, we had that gap, and
Right.
it's dun dun dun, and
Right.
so she didn't want to do it to click track, and she just could not nail that gap.
Oh,
That
that's right.
yeah, I remember that. So so like, oh, Lisa, you got to use a click track.
Yeah, that's part of the deal, right? The learning curve of getting it right and sort of and we
Yeah.
all intents and purposes professional capacity like that. So that was
But
a
out of
big
everything, like if that's my only, concern or beef that I had about a lead singer, like that's a pretty easy to deal with singer.
we were at the mastering. The one time I had a discussion, she pulled me aside at the mastering studio. And I don't remember the content of the discussion, but I remember really hearing her for the first time. She didn't think I was listening to her ideas. And then I've now learned I'm 40, I just turned 45, that I'm
Wow, you're
frankly not a good
so
listener.
old.
I'm not a good listener. And it's never a good enough excuse to say, yeah, just genetically not a good listener. But I've noticed there are certain family members I have that, you'll be looking at you and you go, oh no, they're not listening. And I do that same thing. And it is so rude and so insensitive. But I think I'm probably undiagnosed. I probably have ADD and undiagnosed is another reality, but because of my growing up in the 80s, they didn't have Ritalin or diagnosis for that yet. Um, so I don't know.
Well,
I digress. I
speaking of
digress.
like your emails were always an adventure because like in middle of a sentence there was always another sentence.
Yeah,
Like I
that's
remember
still a
this one
problem. That's still a problem for me.
because we used to rehearse at your Third Street. Was it Third Street in San
Yeah.
Mateo?
Yes, Third Avenue.
Third Avenue, and then there was one email you were
Maybe it was
saying
Third
like,
Street.
just come in, there's
Humboldt Avenue. Excuse me, Humboldt Avenue. That was
there's a key and like in the middle of a sentence, like I have almonds for you to snack on or something like that. Like in the
yeah,
middle of
that's
another.
That's again, I'm 45, but I remember in college I had my friend Andrew Hardenbrook. I've been friends with him for like 6 months, and I started saying something, and he goes, "You guys want to hear this?" He goes, "Is it going to make sense?" And I was like, "Oh," and then I thought about it. I was like, "Oh, it's because I digress and have so many non sequiturs." My brain, the problem is I don't filter out. I've gotten better because I've been doing a lot more press lately, so I really plan ahead and prepare what I'm going to say and think before I speak. But that's actually a newer thing for me. Probably the last 5 years, I've figured out how to do that in a professional capacity. But in emails and stuff, I send professional emails to people where in the middle of a sentence, like you say, I'll digress into some other thing, and they go, because that's just how my brain's wired. It's a creative mind of mine. That's the positive spin on it. The negative spin is no one knows what the hell I'm talking about every once in a while.
Yeah. So tell me, what have you been doing press about? Is it about Sean's Music Factory?
Well, no, I mean, it's the peanut stuff again. It's all these records. It's been, since I last talked to you, Billy, it's gone insane. I mean, since I last talked to you, I added these two posters, Record Store Day poster that has peanuts on it, because we've released two. This Record Store Day and last Record Store were nuts. Last year's Record Store Day, April, I should say, April Record Store Day, they picked 10 albums. Talking Heads, Olivia Rodrigo, Beatles, some other very famous people, And our album, It Was a Short Summer of Charlie Brown,
Yeah.
were picked by Billboard, and we were not ready. We made 1,000 copies. All those people made 30,000. We made 1,000 copies, and people yelled at us because we didn't make enough. So this year we made 5,000 Easter eggs for It's the Easter Beagle Charlie Brown. This is all Vince Guaraldi music and the nepotism because my dad made Peanuts, a television show in 1965 with Charles Schulz. Brought in jazz, brought in kids. That was my dad's thing for the rest of his life. And so this sign here says, "Life is better with music." My wife got me that, and because we've put out 6 albums in 3 years of Guaraldi scores, and we've put out two that I'm not as big a fan of, but they're hugely successful because we made an egg shape, and people on TikTok promoted it, and young people are discovering jazz, and they want their one of their 5 colored eggs. And at first, I thought that was a gimmick, but then it became novel and it worked. And this year's Record Store Day, the next day on Discogs, it was Taylor Swift, Post Malone, and our junk, which has no business being there, and then selling it, which I don't like, on the second market for like $200. We made a $22 album LP that people are selling for $250 online. So something's connecting. And again, at first I was leery of the gimmick part of it, but now I turn it to call it novel, because whatever gets young people to hear Vince Guaraldi or jazz in general, like a gateway drug, is exciting. And I'm a fan of Vince Guaraldi myself. So to be able to, and like I said, we've been doing so much press, and I'm the PR guy for You're a Good Sport, Charlie Brown. We just released a Zoetrope. We've done 2 represses, and we just released it last Friday. And so we can't keep ahead of the demand because we're a small record label and we don't know what we're doing to a certain extent. And we're learning as we go. And now I feel like I'm almost an expert in vinyl when I didn't know anything about it just 3 years ago.
All right, so let's take a quick step back to fill in my massive audience. So you mentioned your dad, you mentioned Peanuts. Your dad was Lee Mendelson, a
Yes.
legendary television producer, best known for bringing Peanuts to life on screen. Produced classics like A Charlie Brown Christmas and worked with Charles Schulz and Vince Guaraldi, as you mentioned. So tell me, like, what was it like growing up with Lee Mendelson? So I met him numerous times, and he was hilarious. Your dad was hilarious.
My dad, and again, what's interesting is I talked to him about him a little bit early on, in sort of when we released our first album as Lee Mendelson Film Productions. My dad's company was a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving in 2023. And people asked up front, like what you just did about my dad. And so I talked about it a little bit. But now, after the last few years, it came up again recently because we did a Peanuts podcast, and several cartoon historians have done podcasts with us, or vinyl experts. And they asked what it like, and we're doing a feature article in a local magazine, and a lot of questions. It turned into a therapy session because my dad I used the word schmoozer, and he was a schmoozer in a positive way because he had a grace of, like you said, storytelling, making people feel at ease. He did this with random strangers when we'd go on trips around the world. I was fortunate enough to go to Europe with him and my brother. He always said, ask people about where they're from, what their story is. And I took that to heart. It was one of my biggest lessons from him. And he was so inquisitive that he made so many documentaries about John Steinbeck, and he won an Emmy for it. I have that here. I inherited it from him. He won, or he did on the America's National Parks, bridge builders in San Francisco before he met Charles Schulz. It was all about the building of the Golden Gate Bridge. He wrote a song for that. He was profoundly loyal to the people he worked with, and he knew how to tap their creative energy. He worked with Vince Guaraldi till the day he died. He worked with Charles Schulz till the day he died. He worked with Bill Melendez, the animator, till the day he died. And, talking about bands or creative enterprises, who can say they successfully worked with that same core team for the duration of their lives? It's profound, and it's something that when you first met me, I didn't talk about very much. And I've now taken, right before he died, I think I made it clear how proud I was, and especially as the epiphany after his passing. He died on Christmas Day, appropriately, since his claim to fame was Charlie Brown Christmas, or his biggest claim to fame. Um, I went from sort of shying away from it, being embarrassed by it, the whole Shadow thing, being his son who also wrote music. My dad wrote Christmas Time Is Here, the lyrics, as well as a few other songs, to then possessing it and owning it. And now I feel so good about continuing his legacy. It's connecting me after he's been gone now for 5 years. It connects me to him and Vince Guaraldi in a way that has, it's been really moving. It's been really, this life we're on, this journey to be able to connect to these works in any way I can to support them. As a steward, a custodian for it. I'm just grateful. That's the word for it.
Yeah. So now I'm curious, how did your dad influence your relationship to music and storytelling? Because all of your songs had a story. Like let's think about Parallels. It starts with a Jesus Christ and Buddha said,
Well, I could,
although it's not a religious song, but like Lone Star had the lyric about was there a car crash in Lone Star, right?
yes.
There was a
Well,
car
it's
crash.
ironic. So actually, it's interesting you say that because parallels where I can draw a comparison. My dad is Linus. My dad's Jewish, and the Charlie Brown Christmas is about Christmas, and Charles Schulz, Sparky, was a Christian, and so when Linus was going to make his speech where he reads from the Bible, which was almost punk rock to be so in your face religious to say, here's a passage from the Bible at the end of that episode. I think my dad was adamant. I don't know if it was him or Charles Schultz, but I know there was a sense of we're taking a risk here, putting this in your faces. But here's my dad writing a song about Christmas, being a Jewish person. And so my dad was very open about all religions and very tolerant of all, just really progressive. And so that song Parallels, I coupled that with I took a class in college with this really brainy guy called Religion and Modernity. And it was the idea that the more unifying concepts and parallels you can draw between religion, the more we benefit from that concept. So I like the idea that that Muhammad and Jesus and Abraham all potentially could have been the same person from three different religions, even though it's unlikely. There's some historical precedent that they might have potentially been the same person or built up to be the same person in time, and that's what formed three of the biggest religions in the world.
Yeah.
And then,
It-
Lone Star. I remember we did a test out with our friends and family of the songs. We weren't sure we were going to record a demo. And I remember several people, close friends, saying it's a little victimy. So that part is not my dad. My dad did not play the victim. So that comes from some other personal genetic thing where I was like, oh, there's a car crash and I'm going to see my friends, and they didn't show, they left. Drove 25 minutes, and I remember this car crash because I was like, again, it's all perspective. This horrible thing happened. And then so why am I complaining that these people didn't wait for me when there's bigger issues in the world, that kind of a thing, and putting it in
right.
perspective.
So let's go back to all the Peanuts work that you've been doing. What else are you working on there?
Well, listen, I'm excited. And actually, I've never told, I mean, I don't know if this is going up this week, next month, it doesn't matter. I helped produce a symphony in 2022. We brought in David Benoit, who was like extended family member who worked on Peanut shows with my dad, scoring them since 1989, since I was 9. And he did his own full episode of This Is America, Charlie Brown, where my dad did one with Wynton Marsalis, Dave Brubeck, the Winans, I think, and George Winston, all these classic jazz folks. And David Benoit just stuck around and wrote another song with my dad called um, Just Like Me. Hello, little tree. Yeah. Oh man, I'm forgetting the name of the song. Anyway, David Benoit, we call him the torchbearer because he does Vince Guaraldi proud, and every year goes out and does at least a handful of concerts in honor of David at Villa Montova up here and the Carriage House, and he does huge theaters, and people eat it up. And I think he's the best representation of Vince. So it made sense to have him arrange this music because he had a close relationship with our family, and we did it in Santa Rosa, full audience. People loved it. Snoopy came out on stage at the end, and it's all this, what I would say is lesser known Guaraldi Peanuts cues that we pigeoned into like medleys and like 4-minute medleys of things in the show that would be 30 seconds long. We figured out how to make them longer. And I felt so honored to work, again, nepotism. I had no business working with him, but I felt competent enough to work with him musically. And this Christmas, it's going to be the first San Francisco Symphony is doing it this Christmas.
Wow.
And I'm stoked. We just met with that lady last week. She's working with John Batiste in the symphony.
John Batiste. Wow.
Yeah, the week before we go. And my kids and I go to see him in Mountain Winery just for fun on our own. But the whole first half is going to be, Halloween. Halloween is you can't see it, but it's Linus and the Pumpkin Patch. It's all the Halloween themes in one medley, all the Thanksgiving themes. We go through every season because Peanuts has Valentine's and Easter, and we have even some more obscure ones from You're Not Elected, Charlie Brown, the Incumbent Waltz, which was last year. We released that one with the presidential election. But the first half is all the obscure stuff, and the second half is the stuff everybody knows. So it's going to be 40 minutes of just all the themes that everyone could ever imagine. They don't even know, they realize people don't even know they know these themes. That's how deep it is in our zeitgeist. And then the whole second half is going to be Christmas music. So I'm really excited about that. And we're going to be releasing 2 or 3 of these albums for the next 3 years, marking anniversaries and whatever. And hopefully most, if not all, these albums will be released. There's 15 scores in total. And like I said, we've been riding the jazz vinyl wave. And I've been calling it in the press the Giraldi Renaissance, because somebody called it the Peanuts Renaissance because it's the 75th anniversary of Peanuts. But people are discovering it year round. What is also exciting is we're leading really Billie Eilish and Coldplay again are leading the sustainability push on these albums. But I'm happy to say we're doing everything we can to make them lowest carbon footprint, meaning it's made like we use bio vinyl out of Germany, which is industrial waste and cooking oil. I'm a big climate activist, as I've mentioned to you before, Billy. And so I'm excited that people are thinking that way. And it seems like the record manufacturing industry is moving that way. I'm not saying we're responsible for it, but I know we're helping, saying we need this. We'll pay a premium so that we're not causing problems for the planet, and pay more for the paper materials or the records or even the CDs, so that it has it becomes more in demand. So more people want it, more customers want it. And the real scary thing was a lot of press were like, I don't know about this bio vinyl, how it's going to sound. And people say the fidelity is just as good as the good old fashioned plastic that people used to get. Yeah. We had a listening party at Amoeba last weekend in San Francisco. And you know what's dope is that there was maybe 100 people there, and I'd say 90% of them were under 40, younger than me. And I was just so thrilled that young people, I think initially we thought it was going to be all the over 60s they were 8 years old. But the fact of the matter is people watched Charlie Brown Christmas when they were 8 in 1965 all the way to yesterday, And so it continues to be that timeless connectivity thing. And I'm just excited to share other music with people that they haven't heard.
Yeah. What is bio vinyl made out of?
So BioVinyl is it's a German company called Optimal that takes industrial waste and cooking oil from the Netherlands and repurposes it so that they have a zero carbon or 99% carbon free thing. I think even that factory and other factories we work at make a point of offsetting their even their factory emissions, the electricity it costs to make a factory go with either solar panels or other ways to offset it. There's a lot of good companies out there. One we haven't even worked with yet, we've been trying to, is called Good Neighbor, and they're exclusively I think they're in Tennessee. They're a United States company, and they exclusively make sustainable records, the most sustainable records you can get. And so I'm hoping one day we can get together with them. So shout out to them, even though we haven't worked with them. We've worked with maybe 6 or 7 different plants now.
Wow. Yeah. So when you're not being an environmentalist and a husband, father, lover, a lot of your time is being taken up by Sean's Music Factory.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me about that. And so you teach music to kids, little kids, right? And I'm kind of curious, like, what do you notice most about how kids respond to music emotionally? What does music do for a developing child? Tell us about how.
Great.
Tell us about how old the children are that you teach.
Great question. So I started right out of college. You and I were at a coffee house, and I saw a flyer. We were in Mirror Image, or maybe it was before. It might have been before Mirror. It might have been Shades of Houston or something. Before we found Lisa, we were at a coffee house. It was like 21 or something, and it was a flyer for this program called Music Together. And you can have a licensed Music Together center. It's a research-based international program. And in 2007, right after Logan was born, I started my own licensed center. This is how I make most of my living, most of my livelihood. When I say what I do for a living, I usually lead with, I'm a children's music developmental advocate. And even with the Giraldi stuff, it all still connects. But a 0 to 4-year-old is what I generally work with. And people think it's crazy, and I would have thought it was crazy. But what happens is when you start, let's say with a 4-month-old, including my own children who've cycled through the program, is by the time they're 2.5, they're able, all intents and purposes, to do what a 4-year-old is doing had they not taken this class, because the music reinforces it and they hear it over and over again. And it's diverse music with asymmetrical meter and different tonalities and different scales from around the world, different ethnic backgrounds of the songs. And that's what drew me to the program. And then it inspired me in 2013 when my kids were 5 and 3 to make my own band. So I've been doing that for 13 years all over the Bay Area. And it was really the apex of fun from 2013 till COVID 2020, because my kids were in my band. They recorded more than half the songs with me because I thought it was too pandering to have just me doing all this work. Let's have kids hear kids. And that was a big deal for me. And so I used my kids, but in an appropriate way. And my daughter wrote, our biggest hit yet was on internet radio, was a song called Kindergarten Shoes that she wrote the day before kindergarten when she was 5. I got my kindergarten shoes and I'm ready to move. I got my and I just added harmony and guitar. I was absolutely, I'm so glad I have all these 4 albums worth of recordings of my kids. And then it kind of fizzled, get post-COVID. I lost interest when my kids were no longer in it. And I will tell you this, Billy, I recently did a string of about 7 shows over the last 2 weeks in the summer. And it brought me back. I got chills because I haven't had that in a long time. I was like, God, kids are the best. Kids, I remember you and I did a show in Marin with the drunk guy and the bullhorns, and he'd run at the stage. We had 2 guys in the audience for that show. I was like, kids are like that guy without the alcohol, but times usually I do shows for 50 to 500 people now and their parents, and I get the parents up and moving, and I write music that theoretically the parents appreciate and is not like dum 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 baby shark. And so the idea is I put on a rock show now for kids, and they're jumping, and they're so impressionable. All I got to do is jump up and down, and they'll be jumping up and down with me like I'm at an actual rock show. So it fulfills that part of me that I perhaps didn't get carrying on with Mirror Image. And I love it. I just did 2 shows in Santa Cruz. People were beautiful out there. It was outdoor events, and I could literally have 5 people if they're engaged with what I'm doing. It makes it all worth it to connect with kids.
Yeah. So in my limited psychological knowledge, I know that music helps in brain development. So
Yes.
how have you seen that play out in real time?
I didn't answer your question. That was your question, Billy. My bad. See how I digressed there, like we talked about earlier? Yes. So here's the badass thing.
Yeah.
There are kids who are nonverbal. I've worked with undiagnosed, because I've been doing it a long time, kids on the spectrum, special needs. Actually, I don't know what this is, but before COVID, I would have every semester, I'd have 2 kids maybe that were on the spectrum. Now it's like 1 every few semesters that seemingly, and again, this isn't an expert opinion, just based on my experience, but there are kids more specifically who aren't talking or are late talkers who sing words before they say words. So there's an example of brain pathways opening up because of music. There are kids that understand music once they are kinesthetically moving their bodies to it, and they go, oh, now music makes sense. Or there are kids that visually have to see all their parents and me moving and are doing an action that's associated with the song that makes that song connect to them. And what happens is, and to answer your question, is when they go to their preschool concerts, 5 or 4, 5, 6, and they're long gone, they've left my program, maybe they left at 3.5 or 4, they're 1 of 2 kids in the entire class that are competent and comfortable singing. So I'm literally making little armies of music-loving kids, and I can't feel better about that. And it's an age-old thing. It opens up like intervallic relationships is the mathematical mind. There's that part of the equation too. Language development, all that stuff comes along with it. But also with 0 to 4, this is sometimes the first time a kid's socialized, especially post-COVID, with other kids. And so the bonus is literally the name of the program is Music Together. So it's a community where everybody jams. We have jam sessions at the end. You're freaking making a band, and the kids just hitting a drum for 4 minutes straight. And it's the greatest feeling in the world.
Yeah. So, you mentioned making music together is one goal, but what other goals do you have? Is it mastery in music, self-expression, joy, anything else?
So the greatest, I might have mentioned this last time. I know we didn't put it out there, but the greatest validating thing that happened to me creatively, I played all my music for my dad, and he always would say things like the lyrics aren't loud enough. And I always would take it personally, but in hindsight, constructively, my dad worked in the entertainment industry. Yes, he was a lot older, different generation, but he knew what he was talking about. And I realized looking back that he was probably right a lot of the times. And I remember even with my 4 children's albums, he would say, that he could say those first two songs are good. I don't know what you're doing on that third one and everything. I'd reevaluate and I'd look at it from a different perspective. But what happened was I wrote a musical when my son was like 5, and it was this movie musical I wanted to make once, but it was like a post-apocalypse once, and it was all dark and foreboding. And I was like, oh, that sucks because no one wants to see disaster and like climate change actually ruins everything post-apocalyptic. And what have we learned? So it was my dad's ideal coupled with my wife's idea. I was like, why don't you make something positive and engaging versus doomsday? And so I wrote this musical, all the words, all the lyrics, the story called Axelorus, where we've solved climate change in 2050. It was the last thing I played my dad in 2019. I was fully fleshed out. And I remember him saying, I think you got something here. This is good. This is something that people can connect with. And sure enough, I licensed it internationally to Concord Theatricals. It was a hugely rewarding, most validating thing because last year in a purple state of Texas, they did all year long. These high schoolers spent time making props, marketing tools, set design, makeup for my show. It was a competition that Concord got in place, and thousands of kids worked on it. And I saw all this wonderful imagination associated with this science fiction, Goonies meets Back to the Future, kind of technological Stranger Things vibe of these kids that have to save their community from an energy crisis. And it's got this metaphysical character named Axelorus that's like the BFG who visits people in their dreams and plants seeds the night before Earth Day. All of this was me trying to intersect art with the climate movement and meaning, how can I inspire a young person, audience to want to go out and innovate? Well, I'm going to sing a song about going out and innovating and look at how these kids save their community. You can do it too. And it's working because these kids had to think not only how to make theatrical productions sustainably, but just in the context of the story, think about what we can do to not leave a worse mark on our carbon footprint, as it were. Yeah. So that's been good. I wrote in a whole other musical, Billy. No one's heard it yet. I sent it to a script to 3 people I know. No one responded. I don't think they ever read it. It's a lot to ask, but I wrote it's a full-on massive musical, which takes place also on another planet. And hopefully one day I'll get that out. That's my next thing. I'm also finishing up a 5th children's album. I'll hopefully release that at the end of this year, and there's several Peanuts albums next year, probably.
Good. And where can people find more info about Axelorus?
Axelorus is on Concord's website, so you can go to Concord Theatricals. And actually, yeah, if anybody in community theater or high school, middle school, it's meant for 11 to 17-year-olds. So you could have a cast of characters, the 5 main roles, and then there's one old guy. You just put makeup on somebody, and you're going to be the old curmudgeon guy, And so those are the 6 main roles besides Axelorus and a few robots in the show. And I think it's a lot of fun. I purposely made it so that a community, there's 16 parts where everybody gets to spend a lot of time singing and dancing on stage. And I'm hoping next Earth Day, 2026, to hear more people are going to be doing the show in honor of that. Because there's nothing about Earth Day really that's magical. And that was the other precipice, is I wanted to make something, because St. Patrick's Day and catching a leprechaun was so exciting. I was like, let's freaking give some love to Earth Day and make that not just another passing day and the Arbor Day, so let's do something for that.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think the whole time I've known you, you've been a huge environmentalist, and I'm sure when you were growing up, you cut the 6-pack rings when you threw them out and all that, right?
Yeah, I didn't. It wasn't until I had a child and that movie Al Gore made called Inconvenient Truth that I really flipped the switch. Because my mom was a tree hugger, but she talks to the trees, tree hugger. I'm a climate hugger. I appreciate nature. I can be out there. I'm not really an outdoorsy guy. I don't really talk to the trees like my mom does, but I know how important and how precious our planet is on an organism level and a fundamental, we need it to survive level. So that's where my head's at. Let's take care of the planet like it has taken care of civilizations for thousands of years, millions of years, whatever it is.
So actually, let's get deep here. So you have children, you're climate aware. What do you teach your children, knowing that the planet is maybe not headed in the good direction?
Yeah, it's tough because I don't always tell. Like I said before with the Axelorus, I try to always talk positive, and I think my son's getting aware because he has learned about what's going on in the world, that it does feel less safe to think about having children on this planet. And it's a weird thing. We don't want to get into Handmaid's Tale territory where we tell people you can't have kids, but I think we have to think about overpopulation as one factor. And like maybe if you have the option not to have 12 kids, maybe have 11. Those types of things. You know what I mean? I'm being hyperbolic, obviously, but just my kids, I try to lead by example, and they kind of think I'm crazy, but I also think they respect me, which is more important, obviously. And in our city of Campbell, California, I pushed our city council for a year to make what's called a climate action plan. And every community in the Santa Clara County, which is 15 cities here, has a climate action plan except us. And now by the end of this year, theoretically, we'll have maybe the most progressive, the most bold one, because we brought a sustainability commissioner in and we brought in this outside consulting firm. And I'm on the community advisory committee. And I'm stoked because during the process of making a climate action plan, we are now making a climate action and adaptation plan, which is called a CAAP, because as we know, we see flooding in Texas, we see flooding in the New York subway.
Yeah.
These events, which everyone's like, this, that, political, Donald Trump, Gavin Newsom, trees to do the leaves, there should have been a warning, blame this. But it is in some ways out of our control to at this point to say what shoulda, coulda, woulda. These floods and these disasters, as I told my kids, are going to continue to happen. They're going to continue to be tragedies. So all you can do is do your best to shore up defenses preventatively. For example, I'm in a flood area here, so creating stations preparing for those events on top of, at the simultaneous time, reducing our carbon footprint dramatically, because literally it's the scariest thing to me beyond the actual climate change doomsday prophecies of it all is we have the ability to stop climate change. We just have to make these changes to do it. And they're not that hard, in my opinion. And if I continue to lead by example with my family, with my community, I'm hoping it spreads across the world. I know I'm in this climate reality project, which is international. People are doing different things like we are in this community to solve the issues and be better. And again, change the paradigm from what am I going to get? How am I going to make money to how do we rely on each other to fight climate change in a productive way? And I always talk to people who are climate change deniers or more conservative. The reality is it's more cost effective to shore up funds now to think preventatively now. Otherwise, it's going to be exponentially more expensive to take care of these issues 5, 10 years from now. So that's part of what I'm working on with the climate action and adaptation plan, trying to electrify everything, make it socioeconomic so it's equitable for everybody, and it's not just rich people getting solar panels and rich people getting their Teslas, but that there's incentivized. San Jose is doing some killer work. They're going to be the first large city to be zero carbon by 2030. I think they're going to do it, and it's going to be worldwide unbelievable. I've been watching closely, and for a city that size, Campbell's only 40,000. I think San Jose is a couple million or something like, I don't know. It's a lot.
It's over a million.
Over a million.
Yeah.
And if they get to zero carbon by 2030, I mean, it'll just show the world there's a giant urban city that can do this shit. So everybody else should be able to follow those steps and by 2030 or maybe 2035, turn it around. Because these climate events will continue to happen for the next 30 years, regardless of what we do now. The idea for me is if we reduce carbon footprint now, in 30 years, we have the ability to, at that point, say it's all gone and people can live on this planet without worrying about floods and fires and hurricanes and atmospheric rivers and famines and all the stuff that is predicted by this stuff.
Yeah. Now, climate change, it feels like a very daunting task, but what can people do? What simple things can people do to reduce their carbon footprint?
So for me, here's some things. So if an appliance in your apartment or house is about to be on its way out, the simplest thing you can do is if you can afford it. And again, a lot of things are incentivized. Unfortunately, they have it. Part of the goal I have is to streamline it so you don't have to go through all the BS of signing paperwork and getting the tax write-off and waiting 6 months or getting this. It was a lot of extra stuff I had to do to get some of the rebates on my appliances because our house is all intents and purposes completely electric. I'm going to cut off the gas as soon as our dryer dies. We'll kind of cut the gas line to our house, and our house will be sustained by solar power and then on the infrastructure of solar power coming back. That's the first thing. If you have money, get an electric car and get your solar panels. That's the first and easiest thing. If you don't have money, consider eating less meat, less red meat. Consider biking if you're going 5 mile radius. Um, Consider learning and getting into community events, vegetable gardens. Think about how you can, in an urban setting, uh, do more sustainable things with your community. Um, Learn about what your city's policies are. When I discovered my city didn't have a climate action plan, I went into action. And I got to say, I was really surprised. I've actually, probably the proudest thing I've done as a climate activist is gotten this city to act. And I know I've heard other people do it. It's a tireless, thankless job because it doesn't benefit me personally, really, at all. But my idea is if people think more about the future generations and not just what can I get now. And that's the problem with Donald Trump and people who are concerned about their bottom dollar. They don't care about the damage they're doing with the fracking and the oil drilling and all that stuff. But there's big and beautiful ideas for renewable energy, hydroelectric plants, windmills, even though Donald Trump thinks they kill birds and are ugly on the site. Those are things that can be adopted. In our city, we're creating more bike paths to get from here to there, maybe shuttle services, cooling stations for when it's too hot and if you don't have air conditioning so the community can feel at ease about those events coming up. Um, I think that's pretty much it. Get educated and see how you can plug in your community. There's so many climate activist groups, and there's easy things you can do to change policy. California is leading the policy charge. A guy named Josh Becker up here to make it so that businesses are forced to not use gas, even though it's an inconvenient truth. People love their gas stoves. If we can get rid of them, it makes a big difference cutting out that methane that comes from them and the harmful gases in our houses. And so I hope that gives your listeners a bunch of different ideas. I'm really trying to hit the youth because Greta is the future, and my kids in their high schools, they all have sustainable groups there. So hopefully more and more people will do the obvious stuff like recycling and composting and all that.
Do you have any resources where people should visit?
Yeah. In the Bay Area, I would say Menlo Spark. It's called, let me look it up actually right now. And it's a way to facilitate electrifying your home. Um, I just want to make sure I have that name right. Yeah, menlospark.org. That's a local one up here in the Bay Area. The major group I'm involved with. Wow, I have a podcast. I've interviewed I just interviewed these Eco Soul guys who are freaking awesome. They wrote about really funny, funky songs about geothermal, and that'll be out this coming month. Everyday Climate Champion podcast with Eco Soul Entertainment. And they wrote about electrifying their homes, and they had grants, and they worked with groups, I guess, and different groups in the area. But Climate Reality Project is the Al Gore group that I got trained in for a weekend. You can become a climate reality. That's what I did during COVID. I would join any youth group. And in my area, it's Silicon Valley Youth Climate. Any youth group, support them because they're leading the charge, and they have the most gumption, willpower, because they're the ones that the planet's being left to. So they're like, we better work because none of the politicians or middle-aged and up people are doing what's necessary to combat climate change. I'll think of some other ones. Maybe I'll email you.
Good. Well, Deshaun, it's been a very insightful conversation, and I just love talking to you. I love your energy and your creativity and your thoughtfulness. And like what?
Yeah, I'm supposed to challenge you. Is that coming yet? Or
yes, this is let me get to it. No, so yeah, so like a new aspect, different from the pilot that I shot is, I want the guest to challenge me with something. It is either just to make me learn something new or get me out of my comfort zone. So, what is the challenge you have for me?
My challenge to you, and I specifically, if you can I got the audiobook from the library from a thing called Libby, I think is Libby, I think is the app on my phone. I just got my smartphone 2 years ago. I'm just figuring out how to use it still, Billy. The Slime the Family Stone memoir. This thing is the best thing I've read because the forward is done by Questlove, who, while he was making the forward, I think was working on that new documentary about Sly. The three best documentaries that have come out, in my opinion, the last 5 years, and maybe ever, are all three produced by Questlove. Sly and the Family Stone were part of the Summer of '69 concert that won him the Oscar, the same Oscars where Will Smith slapped Chris Rock. That's in that category. Questlove. By the way, Questlove wrote OMG on Instagram about our Zoetrope Good Sport release we just released on Friday. Well, that was a huge deal because that dude is the ultimate music historian on top of being the Roots, obviously, and Jimmy Fallon's band. But Questlove made these three documentaries, and then the second documentary was Sly and the and something about the challenge of being black or something to that effect. I'm saying it wrong and I apologize. And then the third one was an SNL documentary where he did this whole, I don't know if you saw that with the intro. It's every single musical act almost ever and cut together. He must have spent 2 months just on these first 5 minutes where one act goes to the next and it flows musically and he combines it. So like the drums from a Prince song or with like Fleetwood Mac's guitars and just goes thing after thing, every SNL act. Anyway, the point of this is that I've been really getting to Sly and the Family Stone, a contemporary of my father's and Vince Guaraldi's from the 60s and 70s. Let's tie it back. He came up in late 60s with Underdog. 1969 was a DJ in San Francisco. And I want you to learn all about him and his memoir. This guy who does the reading is awesome. The guy who does his point of view, it just sounds like Sly Stone. And you hear every possible story you'd ever want to hear about music and his life.
So you want me to listen to the Sly and the Family Stone memoir? What's it
Yes.
called specifically?
I think it's called, let me get my phone. I think it's called Sly and the Family Stone memoir. Let me double check that. Give me 1 sec. It is called excuse me. It's called Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again. And it's spelled like the weird title. Thank
Yeah,
you for letting me
be
be
myself.
myself
Yeah.
again. And he talks about that song in particular. I just love his music. I love his energy. And yeah, he had a lot of drug issues and what have you, but I think he's one of the coolest. He's my top five performer slash writers of music, and so much of his music is just like top shelf. And I think it's fun. I think you'll have a good time as a musician hearing how he came up with stuff and his life story. You know, that's what's really inspiring.
Well, I'll check it out. I live a block from the West LA Regional Library, so I'll go access it there. And thanks again for being for the second time my first guest on the Middle Age Muchacho podcast. And I just want to give you the time to wrap it up and give us the closing thoughts.
Well, I just want to thank you, Billy. I appreciate it. I know you said you found a lot this year, so congrats to you in your becoming a fully formed human being. And I've seen some of your stand up online, your clips and stuff. So I congratulate you. That is, talk about putting yourself out there. I know in a band is you're putting yourself out there one thing, but when you're going up by yourself and telling words that you've written in front of an audience, there's nothing scarier, but I also can't imagine anything that's more rewarding to just do it and get it under your belt, like you said, and heartening aspect of it. So big ups to you for doing that. And you said you've gotten a stronger sense of complacency in who you are. It's been a pleasure talking with you. And I hope that whoever's listening to this, found some value in some of the things we've talked about today.
Thank you, Sean. I love you, brother.
Love you too.
All right, we'll talk again soon. We'll do another episode.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, you stay out of trouble, man.
You too.
All right, take care, man.